All right, I think we are live today, and this is the PMC Lounge Live, where we go live every Friday and we discuss stuff related to real life project management. If you want to check out the previous live sessions that we have done, don't forget to check out the link in the description. And you will find generally what you're going to find in these live sessions are tips and tricks, are essentially stuff that is going to help you out in real life project management. And similarly, we have a session today where we are going to talk about real life project management, how to actually manage projects. But we are obviously live and kicking here every week, and we delve into some real project management stuff. This is going to definitely boost your career. This is going to help you, hone your project management skills. So you might be just starting out, you might be climbing the ladder of the project management career, or you could be a seasoned professional in project management. But I can guarantee you that the insights that you're going to receive in our live sessions, these are going to seriously level up your journey. So let's get started. Let me again move on to my desktop. And this is a sort of intro about me, a brief introduction about me. As we dive into today's live session, I hope you're feeling comfortable and you have something to munch on, or even a glass of water will be fine, right? You gotta keep yourself hydrated. Don't be shy and do share your thoughts in the chat. If you're watching this live, uh, or even if you are from our replay gang, do drop your comments, throw in some likes, and definitely help us spread the word that we are live. Let's reap the benefits together. Now, our live sessions are essentially split into three parts, and the three parts you can check on the top. The first one is welcome. We are right now welcoming you. So, these are just some initial slides to keep the ball rolling, to get the ball rolling rather, and to have people join our live sessions. Then, the featured content, and today we'll be talking about the 6 steps that you can apply to manage projects as a project manager, of course. And then last call is where we wrap things up. So welcome once again. Let's move on to the next slide, which is a quick word about pmclounge.com. Whether you're catching this live for the first time, if you're on PMC Lounge YouTube channel, or even if you're watching in replay, just a heads up here, PMC in PMC Lounge stands for Project Management Certifications. So, yes, we are all about PMP and other project management related certifications. But guess what? We are not just about the exams. We are also here to keep you in the loop with what's buzzing in the world of project management. What are the industry trends? Uh, what are industry reports? What are they saying about the future of this profession, the project management profession? And that is why I told you that in the beginning, that the live sessions is where we focus only on real life project management. So check out our other videos where we talk about concepts related to project management, stuff that you need to study for your PMP exam, and even other project management certifications. If you're going for ACP, if you're going for CSM, PGMP, PFMP, right? You name it. You will find conceptual videos explained in the simplest language possible on this channel itself. But our live sessions, we tend to sort of talk about real life project management as well. I mean, enough with the academic stuff. We all want to excel and grow in our career as well. So let's talk about real life project management here. Our goal here has always been to simplify project management and break down topics in the simplest language possible. Thousands of our community members have actually aced their PMP exams, and they have used our resources from the articles that you're going to find on pmclounge.com website to playlists that you're going to find on this YouTube channel itself. So, how about hitting that subscribe button so that you too can sail towards your project management career goals? And hey, we are also hanging out on all the different socials. So, do check us out there, give us a follow, show some love, and especially on our Telegram channel. If you never want to miss an update, do check us out on our Telegram channel. All right, a quick quote here before we get into the thick of the things. Being a project manager is like being an artist. You have the different colored process streams combining into a work of art. And I specifically picked up this quote for today's session because we are going to be talking about these different process streams today, right? What are the steps related to delivering a project? So, we'll be talking about a lot of process stuff as well. That's why I picked this quote up. Although I don't know how to pronounce the last name of the person who gave this quote to begin with, I'm going to totally murder it, so I'm not going to even try. But Greg came up with this quote. What do you think about it? Can you relate? Go ahead and drop a comment about this quote and let me know. All right, now let's dive into the content for today's session, and it's all about the 6 steps of project management. So, here's the thing. Assume that you are a project manager delivering web projects. So, your job as a project manager, you work in a company that deals with website development. Your company has several customers and they all want websites to be built, websites to be maintained, and stuff like that, right? So, you are a project manager in this company. So, obviously, what your job is that you need to organize a team to launch a new company website. This is the project that you are working on. And remember, what we are talking about today are basically the steps that you need to take as a project manager to deliver any kind of projects. We'll be talking about 6 steps. If you have ever read the courseware of PMP, you would be able to easily guess what these steps are. But if you have not, then obviously this is going to be a fun ride for you and you'll get to know a lot of stuff. You'll get to know how to manage projects. So here's a basic outline of the 6 steps that you need to take, right? We'll start off with the first step, and that is project initiation. How do you initiate the project, right? So the first thing you got to do is define the project's purpose and objectives. I just mentioned that you work for a company that is into delivering websites for their customers. So obviously, as part of this project, your purpose and objective is to deliver a website. But it's not that simple, right? There are certain steps that you need to follow here. So the first thing is to conduct a thorough analysis of the business needs and objectives driving the project. So, what are the business needs and what are the objectives for you to develop and deliver this website? Now, for you, it's a matter of your job, right? For you, as a project manager working in a company that delivers website, obviously it's your job to deliver a website. But from customer, you need to find this is where you need to do a thorough analysis. From customer, find out what their business needs are. What exactly do they want from the website? Do they want an e-commerce website? Do they want a social networking website? Do they want just a set of web pages that talk about their products and services? That's it, right? So that's something that you need to understand. What are the business needs that the customer is looking to meet, looking to fulfill as part of this project, as part of you delivering this website? And secondly, what are the objectives driving the project? If you're looking for an e-commerce website, if the customer is looking for an e-commerce website, what are their objectives? How much sales are they expecting in the first year, in the second year, right? And how, what are their plans of growth? Because all of this is going to help you basically deliver the project in a way that suits the customer. And we'll dive more into deeper into this discussion as we move along and discuss the different steps. But this is something that you as a project manager definitely need to do. Now, long gone are the days when project managers were just supposed to deliver the project on time, on budget, making sure the quality is as at par, making sure the scope, the requirements are being met. All of that is fine. That's a thing of the past now, because now you as a project manager are expected to understand the business needs. You are expected to understand the objectives of the project, and you are expected to bring value to the table. Now, the next step is to clearly articulate the problem the project aims to solve or the opportunity it aims to capitalize on. Obviously, you can come on this step only after you are finished with the first step. So, the first step is to do a thorough analysis, speak to the salespeople, speak to the customer if possible, speak to stakeholders that are involved in this project, so that you can understand the business needs, you can understand the objectives, and after that you'll be able to clearly articulate the problem that this project aims to solve, right? Okay, create a project charter or a brief document that outlines the project's high level goals, what is the project scope, and what is the success criteria. Remember, this is just a project charter, so you don't have to get into too many details, but having a success criteria is very, very important. You see, a customer might come to you and ask you to deliver a website to them, but their success criteria might be that this website needs to be up and running before the Black Friday sale, right? So you now have a timeline in hand as well, right? So this is something that you as a project manager need to understand, and this is going to happen when you do your thorough analysis. This is going to happen when you understand the objectives that the customer wants to fulfill as part of this project, right? So obviously they want a website, obviously they want an e-commerce website, obviously they may have certain design preferences or requirements or whatever, but when you get down into the details and when you try to understand what is the success criteria, when you speak the customer and try to figure out what should happen so that they consider this project a success and they consider this project as done, possibly that's when you get to know that the customer wants to capitalize on the Black Friday sale, and they want this website to be up and running in production prior to Black Friday. So this is why it is important to define a success criteria as well, and this is a first document, an initial document that you as a project manager should create. It can be a project charter, a formal one, or it can just be a brief document. This is also going to help you later on in the project, where you can actually share this document with your different stakeholders. You can also go back to the customer and tell them what the success criteria was when you started off with the project, right? So the success criteria was that the so and so website needs to be delivered prior to the Black Friday sale. So the customer cannot come back to you and ask you to do the project and let's say deliver it 3 months prior to Black Friday sale, because you have that documented in the success criteria. So that is why this initial document is very important. It solidifies your understanding of the project as well. The next step is to identify stakeholders. Now, here is where you need to compile a comprehensive list of all potential stakeholders. This includes internal and external parties. Obviously, your own team, your own management, your own folks in your own company, they are your internal stakeholders, right? There could be external stakeholders. A customer is an external party. It is possible that the customer's competitor is also a stakeholder, because they are keeping a close eye on what your customer is up to, what is their next step, what is this website that they are coming up with. And obviously there can be other external parties if you want to involve let's say contractors, if you want to involve any third party companies, then obviously they become an external stakeholder as well. So your next job is to compile a comprehensive list of all potential stakeholders. Then You prioritize stakeholders based on their level of influence and interest in the project. The competitor of your customer can have very high interest in your project, but does he or she have any influence? Not at all, because it's between you and the customer that the project is being delivered, right? That the project is being designed and being executed and being delivered. The competitor may not necessarily have a say. But if your customer wants to simply copy your their competitor and they change their website, then your customer might also want to change some of the functionality of their website, right? So that way they may have an indirect influence, but you get the idea when I say who has influence and who has interest on your project. In fact, even within your organization, your own boss may have high influence on your project, but may not necessarily have high interest on your project, because he or she might be dealing with 10 other project managers like you who are working on 20 different projects, right? So your boss may have a very high influence on the project, but may not necessarily have high interest on your project. So this is something that you need to basically prioritize. First, you need to obviously compile a comprehensive list and then come up with this prioritization. Next is you can do stakeholder interviews. You can do surveys to gather their expectations or concerns. This is a good practice. This is something that when you do as a project manager, you basically get a better understanding of what is being expected out of your project, right? So you are reaching out to your stakeholders, which is always a great thing to do. And finally, you develop a stakeholder engagement plan that outlines communication strategies and frequency. What are your communication strategies? Do you have people working in different continents? So then your strategy would be to keep things on emails rather than instant messages, because you cannot expect instant replies. What is the frequency, right? So that's when you speak to the customer as part of the previous step, you can even ask them how often do they want the status report of the project. Do they want the status report, let's say, once a week, or do they want it twice a week, or do they want it once a month, right? So that kind of frequency is also something that you can basically come up with as part of this entire step of identifying stakeholders. Okay, let's talk about project planning. So now we are in step two. Remember, we have six total steps to go. Initiation was the first one. The next one is planning. And this step is going to have several sub steps. So the first sub step is to create a project plan. So you need to create a project plan now, right? You have a charter, you have a stakeholder engagement plan of sorts. Now create a project plan. Now, how do you do that? You do that by breaking down the project into smaller tasks or maybe work packages. This is where the work breakdown structure also comes into the picture, right? So your project, when we say that you need to break down the project into smaller tasks, for a website development project, it could be coming up with the number of web pages that are required, what is the kind of backend web pages needed, or backend structure needed for the website, right? You can break down the tasks again into designing the front end of the website as well. So that could be a task in its own. So similarly, you can have several different smaller tasks when you are basically delivering a project. So this is what you need to do. And next is you develop a work breakdown structure, and this is how you organize and visualize the project's scope. Now, don't get too much caught up in the work breakdown structure. We have several videos on this channel itself. If you are going to search work breakdown structure, you're going to find those videos. Always check out the search section of this YouTube channel. Always check out the search section of our PMC Lounge website. You just put in whatever concept, we have definitely covered it. So we have covered everything that there is that you need to know about project management, right? So try out the search section. You can always try out the playlist section as well. So you develop a work breakdown structure, which is essentially a sort of document, and it gives a brief of how many smaller tasks a project is going to have. So how many smaller tasks a website development project is going to have. That is what your work breakdown structure looks like. Now, once you have this work breakdown structure, you need to assign realistic time estimates to each task and identify dependencies between tasks. So let's talk about what is the kind of color you need to use, the color scheme that you need to use for your website, right? So this color scheme needs to be a constant throughout, right? It needs to be a standard throughout every single web page of the website, throughout all the collaterals that designers need to create for the website. And when I say collaterals, I'm talking about images, banners, right? Stuff like that. Even if you are required to, let's say, design a logo for this customer. So what is the color scheme that needs to be used? So this color scheme, right, finalizing the color scheme and making sure that this color scheme is standard across the board can be a smaller task in itself. Within the design, larger task could be design, and within this, a smaller task could be uh, defining the color scheme and ensuring that it is followed throughout the website. Now, this is possible that there is a dependency on this task, and the dependency is that the customer has a designer in house. So, the customer has a designer, and the designer, the customer's designer, is going to tell you what the color scheme needs to be. But this designer is currently busy with some other project or maybe out of office or whatever. So you essentially, what I'm trying to say is you have a dependency on finishing this task. And this dependency is basically the availability of the customer's designer. Similarly, when you have several tasks, when you have broken down the project into several tasks, you will be able to identify the dependencies that you have between each of these tasks. Now, you can use project management tools, you can use Gantt charts, you can use any other project management software that you have. And this is going to create a visual representation of the project plan. You can use Microsoft projects, you can use Gantt charts. There are several other software for project management available out there. It is very likely that within your own organization, there is a project management tool that your organization uses. So, based on this information that you have gathered so far, you will be able to create a plan for your project, and this is going to be a visual plan. This is ideally something that should be available for everyone to refer to. Okay, so within project planning, our next sub step is to define roles and responsibilities. So here you need to identify who are the key project team members, and you need to define their roles and responsibilities. So remember, you identified stakeholders when you were initiating the project, right? You can use that document that you had created while identifying the stakeholders, and now you can identify who are the key project team members, who is your development manager, who is your, let's say, quality manager, who is your lead designer, right, who is your database guy. So you can identify who are the key project team members because they make up the project team, and then you need to define their roles and responsibilities. This is something that you as a project manager need to do. Clarify reporting lines and communication channels within the team. Sometimes what happens is, if this is not done, and I'm talking about specifically about communication channels. So if reporting lines and communication channels are not in place, you have a key resource on the project, right? A key project team member is the development manager. The development manager has 10 developers working under him or her. Now, sometimes project managers deal with a situation that these developers individually try to reach out to the project manager. And when that happens, you can have a similar thing happening with your quality team. You have six quality, you know, maybe QA quality analysts, right, or quality engineers. So you have six quality analysts, you have 10 developers, you have five designers, you have four people from database, and each of them individually reaching out to you is definitely going to bog you down. So that is why it is important to have clear reporting lines and clear communication channels. Your communication channel as a project manager can be just with the development manager, just with the quality manager, and just with a database lead, and just with a lead designer, right? You don't have to individually speak to everyone. Obviously is a possibility that certain communication need to go out to the entire team. It is possible that you send out a status report for your project team, and that is something that the entire project team needs to be kept in loop in, right? So you need to send out an email to everyone, every single person. But when it comes to, let's say, weekly status calls, you don't need all these people on that weekly status call. Or if you're doing and delivering this project by following, let's say, the scrum way of delivery, right? So you're following scrum, and in your daily scrum or the daily stand up, you don't need everyone. You may just speak to the development manager and the quality manager, the lead designer, right? So that is how you clarify reporting lines and communication channels. Develop a RACI matrix. Now, RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. As I mentioned earlier, you are going to pretty much find videos on all these concepts on our channel. So do definitely use the search icon. Okay, so when you do a RACI matrix, you need to clearly define roles for each project task or deliverable. So the database lead is accountable for delivering the backend database by so and so date, right? So this is something that you need to define when you are developing a RACI matrix, right? The developers that are, let's say, the database engineers that are working under the database lead, they are responsible. They might not be accountable. The database lead might be someone who is accountable, and there is obviously a difference between someone who is responsible versus someone who is accountable. Your own manager, let's say you report to a program manager, you can consult them for certain issues that you might face, right? So in this RACI matrix, they would fall under the consult category. You may have, let's say, a portfolio manager who the program manager reports to, and the portfolio manager need not get into the nitty gritty of how the project is going, right? And he or she might just want to be informed about the progress of your project. So this is how you come up with a RACI matrix. You already have the stakeholders list. You already have identified key project team members. It is just a matter of putting all these members, including your customer, in this matrix. Now, you need to also ensure that team members understand their roles and are equipped with necessary resources as well as authority to fulfill their responsibilities. Now, when we say resources, this includes team resources, this also includes physical resources. So, if let's say a designer needs a certain software for designing, you as a project manager need to ensure that this software is in place. This is what it means when it says you need to ensure that necessary resources are available. When we talk about authority, we mentioned that there could be a database lead and there could be, let's say, three or four database engineers that are working with this database lead. It is possible that this database lead is actually just a co-worker of these other three database engineers. But you as a project manager need to ensure that these folks, these database folks, get to know that you are assigning this database lead position to so and so person, and other three are going to basically work based on the requirement that the database lead suggests based on whatever the database lead asks them to, right? You don't want people, thinking on their own and, trying to do things their own way. That is not how you deliver a coherent product. So obviously they need to work together. Obviously they need to, do their own communication, do their own coordination. That's fine. But you need to define, and this is where the RACI matrix comes into the picture. You need to define that this person has the authority, right? We have a database lead who has the authority. So this is something which is important for you as a project manager to ensure is done. The next sub step in project planning is to develop a budget. Let's talk money now. You need to estimate costs that are associated with each project task. It also includes personnel, it includes materials, and any external services. So I just talked about how the designer might need a certain software to do the design work. So that it comes under materials here. So you need to ensure that your company has the license for for that software which the designer need, right? So this is something which will be included in the budget of your project. This also includes the personnel. So if you are going to take 6 months to develop this website, then the cost of having all these database engineers, the development manager, the developers, the quality manager, the quality analysts, quality engineer, right? Any other folks, let's say some SMEs, let's say some consultants, business analysts, anyone that you want on the project, their basic salaries, right, or the cost of having those people on your project, that becomes a budget of your project. That becomes a part of the budget of your project. So this is what it means when it says personnel. And even external services. So let's say you want to host the website and your company does not offer hosting services. So you might have to reach out to another company that does so. And that becomes the external service that you would need as part of this project. So that is something that you need to ensure. You need to add all that up so that you develop a budget. Now create a budget that includes both fixed and variable costs along with contingency reserves for unexpected expenses. Again, this is something that we have covered in the past. Consider potential risks and uncertainties when developing cost estimates. This is again very, very important. What are the fixed costs? What are the variable costs for your project? Contingency reserve is something that you basically plan for a rainy day scenario. So let's say your contingency reserve is, let's say, 5%, and the website will be developed in, let's say, $10,000, right? So 5% of $10,000 is something that you would keep as a contingency reserve. If something were to go wrong, right, you can deploy this contingency reserve. And that is what you would basically keep aside and keep in mind when you are going to develop a budget for the project. You need to obviously regularly track and manage the expenses throughout the project to ensure that they align with the budget. So if it's a 6 months long project and at the end of third month you have already exhausted 80% or 85% of the budget of your project, there is definitely something wrong. And this is why you should not wake up at the end of the third month and realize this. This is why you need to regularly track and you need to regularly manage the expenses throughout the life of the project. All right, the next sub step in project planning is to identify risks and develop a risk management plan. Again, very, very important. Even if you go over any project management class, any project management courseware, if you're a project manager, you know that risk is where your focus needs to be. We recently did a podcast and the guest said something very beautiful, and he said that if there were no risks, you as project managers wouldn't have a job, because your job is totally dependent on ensuring that when you are delivering the project, when you are bringing about this change, it is done in a systematic manner. It is done in a planned manner so that the risks are minimized. And that is where, in planning, you need to identify and develop a risk management plan. So, what do you need to do? You need to conduct a risk analysis to identify potential threats and opportunities that are related to the project. There is a possibility that risks turn into opportunities. So sometimes risk, what is a risk, right? So risk is something that may or may not happen in the future. Now, this may or may not happen uh, incident, or this may or may not happen condition, can be something which could be a threat to your project, but at the same time it can be an opportunity as well, right? So that is something that you need to basically plan for. Assess the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. So you have a list of, let's say, 5 risks. uh, Now you need to find out if that risk were to materialize, because a risk is a may or may not condition, right? So if it does happen, if the risk does materialize, what is the impact that it is going to have on your project? That is the next step in identifying risks and developing a risk management plan. Now, once you are done with that, you need to develop risk response strategies for high priority risks, including even mitigation, contingency, or acceptance plans. So, this is something that we have discussed in the past as well, but just for the sake of this video and benefit of the audience, I'd like to mention that you have identified risks, you have identified the likelihood of their impact, right? The likelihood of that risk materializing and the impact it would cause on your project if it does materialize. The next thing to do is, okay, I know the risk, I know the likelihood. There's, let's say, a 20% chance that the risk is going to materialize. I know the impact. If this does materialize, it is possible that I'm going to, maybe expect a cost, uh, you know, expect a cost, more cost on your project, right? So expect basically uh, a a cost uptick in your project. So if this risk were to materialize, your project is going to cost, let's say, $1,000 more. So the next step to do is to develop a risk response plan. How are you going to get this $1,000? Can you keep it in your contingency reserve? Can you let the customer know upfront that, hey, in our risk management plan, we have this risk. There is a 20% probability that this risk may materialize, but if it does, we have an impact of $1,000. How do you want us to proceed? And based on the response of the customer, you may deploy a mitigation, you may deploy a contingency, or you may just accept the risk, right? Move on with your acceptance plan. Establish a risk monitoring and control process to track and manage risks throughout the project. Again, this is something that can be done using certain softwares. A lot of project managers might go over the risk management plan, the list of risks that they have, let's say on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, and make sure that none of the risks are materializing. If they are, how can their impact be reduced, right? You can deploy the risk response strategies based on that. So that is all about identifying risks and developing a risk management plan. The third step, remember, we are talking about 6 steps that you can deploy to deliver a project. We've talked about initiation, we've talked about planning. The third step is project execution. And obviously, there are several sub steps in project execution as well. The first one is assemble the project team and communicate the plan. You already know who the stakeholders are, you already know who the team members are, you already have the plan. You need to communicate the plan to your team members and stakeholders. So you can do a kickoff meeting to introduce the team members, you can discuss the project goals and review the project plan. Remember, this is something, the groundwork for all of this is something that you have already done in the previous steps. Clearly communicate roles and responsibilities. Again, this is something that we did in the previous step, right? Emphasizing the importance of each team member's contribution. Foster a collaborative team culture by encouraging open communication and addressing any initial concerns. So, this is something that you are doing in the kickoff meeting. This is something that you are essentially setting ground rules, right, for the teams to work together. Uh, you introduce the teams to each other, you let them know what are the objectives, and this is something that you would have already done in the previous two steps, right? Gathering all this information is something that you have already done. In this step, you are essentially disseminating this information to everyone. All right, let's talk about the next sub step, which is develop the website according to specifications. And when we say develop the website, your project is obviously, because the example that we are taking is the development of the website, but your project could be anything. Whatever that you're doing, right? You need to do that according to the specifications. How do you do that? You follow the project plan and design specifications to begin website development. This is again something that you would have created in the past itself. Implement an iterative development process allowing for the feedback and adjustments as needed. Again, this is not something which will work for every single project out there. We are talking about the website, so we think that having an iterative development process is going to be very, very helpful here, which means you develop the first version, you deliver the first version to the customer, you seek feedback, and then you develop the next version, right? You basically keep on adding features and functionalities in an iterative manner. Right. Next is conduct regular code reviews and quality assurance testing to ensure the website meets design and functionality requirements. Your design requirement could be the use of certain colors. Your functionality requirements could be, let's say the website should load in less than a second, right? That could be a functionality requirement. Implement a version control system to track changes and manage code collaboration among team members. This is again something that can be done based on the software that you're using, right? The code base that the team is using. This is something that can be done there, but you as a project manager need to ensure that this is happening, the version control, right? You need to also ensure that code collaboration is happening among the team members. Okay, in project execution, the next sub step is to hold regular meetings. If you are doing Scrum, you might be doing daily stand up, you might be doing retrospectives, reviews, whatnot. Schedule regular team meetings to discuss progress, challenges, and upcoming milestones. Use these meetings to address any roadblocks or concerns raised by the team members. Pretty straightforward, both of these, right? Provide a platform for team members to share updates on their tasks and collaborate on solutions. Sometimes this platform could be just a channel that you have created on Microsoft Teams, or something that you have created on Slack, or maybe an internal collaboration web page that you have created where people can come in and post their updates, right? So this is again something that you as a project manager need to ensure that the teams have a platform to voice their status and if they have any concerns. Adjust the project plan if necessary based on the team's feedback and evolving requirements. And not just the team's feedback, it could be customers' feedback as well, right? So when we say evolving requirements, the customer may look at the website that has been completed so far and may add more requirements because it is the evolving nature of a project, right? So you need to adjust the plan based on this. And this is where the iterative delivery comes in very handy. All right, manage project resources. So you need to regularly review and update a resource allocation to ensure that the project stays on schedule and within budget. So this is again something very, very important. You should avoid the situation where in a 6 months long project, on the third month, you are finding that 85% or 80% of the money allocated for your project has been exhausted. So this is why regularly reviewing and updating resource allocation is important. Implement a communication plan to keep stakeholders informed of progress and any resource constraints. When you have a plan in place, if you have these daily meetings or weekly meetings, this is something that can be taken care of on its own. Address any issues related to team member workloads, resolving conflicts, redistributing tasks as needed. This is again something that you would do on real life project management. You will find conflicts, you will find designers thinking that the web page should look like this, and coders thinking that coding something like this is not possible, and there's a conflict in place. You as a project manager need to step in here, right? So there is a possibility that certain team members have higher workloads. Again, that is something that you as a project manager need to step in to ensure that the workload is something which is evenly distributed. All right, let's move on and let's talk about the next step, which is monitoring and controlling. So, you need to track progress against the project plan. This is the first sub step of monitoring and controlling. You are executing and you have a plan. So, you have a plan in place, you are doing your work, you need to track progress of that work against the plan that you have. Implement key performance indicators, which is KPIs, to measure progress and performance. This could mean that every month we are going to spend so and so so much percentage of the budget, or so many dollars, right? Or this could also mean that every month we are going to deliver 5 requirements or 6 requirements, whatever. So this is the KPI that you need to set as a project manager, and you need to track the progress of the team based on that. Use project management tools to regularly update and review task status against the project timeline. Monitor resource utilization, ensuring that team members are effectively contributing to project goals. Now, this they are focusing more on the team resources here, but this could also mean resource utilization of physical resources. If you have certain servers, do you need the entire capacity of the server, or you don't need the entire capacity, right? It is possible that you need higher capacity during testing. It is, and testing is going to happen in fourth and fifth month only, so you don't need that much resources in the first, second, and third month of your project. So again, that is again something which is part of the resource utilization that you need to monitor as a project manager. The next sub step of monitoring and controlling is to implement a change control process. A lot of people tend to think that if you are delivering the project in an agile manner, following Scrum or following extreme programming or whatever, right? You don't need to have a change control process. That is totally wrong. So you need to establish a formal process for requesting and approving changes to project scope or requirements. Even if you're working in an agile environment, there is a way to have this process in place. You will have your product backlog, right? So if the customer requests for a change, it has to come via the product backlog. It cannot be just an email of 2 lines asking for certain change. There has to be a process that needs to be followed, and which is something that you need to implement as a project manager. Assess the impact of proposed changes on project timeline, budget, and resources. So this is the next thing that you need to do, right? Somebody comes in, the customer comes in, and they say, hey, can you change this page and make it look like this? Well, how much time would you need to do that change? Would you need more cost, right? Would that increase the cost? Do you need more resources? It is possible that this change is something that we need, let's say, an extra server for, or we need, uh, you know, maybe an extra team resource for. We don't have the capability to code this in. We need to hire another coder to do this. So this again is something that you need to assess uh, as a project manager for every change. Communicate approved changes to relevant stakeholders and update the project plan accordingly. Now, let me sip some water here. Okay, so something that we need to talk about here is approved changes. What does this mean? If a customer comes in and says that, hey, we have a plan in place, we have the requirements, but I want so and so requirement to be part of our project plan from here on. This is also in scope of your project. So you did what? You had this formal process as a project manager, you had implemented this formal process. So this change went through the formal process. You have assessed the impact, and let's say the impact is pretty low. This is something that maybe increases the timeline of the project by a day and increases the budget by $200 or whatever, right? You don't need extra resources for this. You just need one day, $200, and this change can be included. Now, when we say approved changes, who approves changes? If the customer is asking for a change, is it already an approved change? Not really. So, this is where when you implement the change control process, you also need to have a committee of sorts, a team of sorts, maybe a change control board, CCB, which is essentially a group of key stakeholders who are going to look at each change and are going to approve or reject the change. These people could be you as a project manager, it could be let's say the sponsor, someone who's providing the money for the project, it could be the customer, your lead developer or the development manager can be part of this change control board, right? So every change needs to go through this set of people before it can be approved, right? And you need to communicate approved changes to the relevant stakeholders, and based on that you need to update your project plan. Okay, the next sub step here is to continuously monitor and manage risks. We have done a lot of groundwork while planning for risks, and now is the time to regularly review the risk register. Risk register is essentially a list of all the risks that you have, and you need to identify new risks because things change every day on projects, right? So, are there any new risks? If yes, you need to assess the effectiveness of existing risk response strategies. Do you need to deploy new response strategies based on the new risks that are uncovered? Implement contingency plans when necessary and communicate any changes to the project team. We already talked about what contingency is, and if a risk materializes, you may have to implement a contingency plan. You need to address issues promptly, involving the appropriate stakeholders to find solutions, something pretty straightforward that you as a project manager need to do. And finally, let's talk about closing the project. Not finally, this is just the fifth step. I have one more step after this. So, closing the project, what all do you need to do? This is the first sub step of closing the project. Ensure project deliverables meet standards. What does this mean? You need to conduct a final review to ensure that all project deliverables meet the specified standards and requirements, right? Your website that you have developed so far, does it meet the specified standards and requirements? Standards and requirements is something that you would have put together in the initial steps itself. It was also something that you were reviewing throughout the course of the project. So you need to ensure that your website meets that. This is the first step in basically closing the project. Now you need to obtain a sign off from the key stakeholders. This could be the sponsor, this could be the customer, this could be your own manager, this could be the development manager, quality manager, right? So when they sign off on the website or the final product of the project, they are confirming their acceptance of the completed project. It shouldn't be that you have delivered the project and 3 days later the customer comes back and says, hey, I never signed off on the project, I want these three changes, but you have already closed the project, right? So that is why obtaining sign off is the key. Address any outstanding issues or defects identified during the final review. Now, let's say if there are any defects or if there are any outstanding issues that you find during this final review, what are you going to do after that? Because you are right now closing the project. So, do you again open everything up and you again start working? Well, this is where the sixth step comes into the picture, and I'll talk about it. But before that, let's first close out the project. So, the next sub step of closing the project is to obtain feedback from stakeholders. You can again do surveys, you can do interviews to gather feedback from stakeholders regarding their satisfaction with the project. You can document both positive aspects and even the areas of improvements. This is going to be helpful in your future projects. You can use feedback to identify lessons learned, and you can make recommendations for continuous improvement. So, this is something that you would do in closing the project. The next sub step is to close out contracts and release resources. So, if you have used any third party resources, you may have entered into contracts with them, right? So, you need to ensure that all these contracts are closed. This can be with external vendors. You may have certain contracts, or let's say certain agreements in getting certain resources within your company, right? So you need to ensure that this is also formally closed and these resources are released. It can be team members, it can be equipment, it can be any contracted services. The next step is to update project documentation to reflect the project's final status and archive relevant information for future reference. So this is essentially updating the project basically, updating the project documentation basically. But now the last step comes into the picture, which is the post implementation review. Now, for all that matters, it is possible that this is part of your closing activity itself, right? In the grand scheme of thing, this whole post implementation review can be part of the closing itself, but I wanted to keep it separate because I thought there are certain steps here which are very very important and they deserve their own specific step. So, conducting a post implementation review. What you need to do here is you need to gather the project team and key stakeholders to conduct a comprehensive review of the project's overall success. Now, remember in the beginning, I mentioned that as a project manager, long gone are the days where you were delivering the project on budget, on time, to quality, and all that, right? That is all fine. That is a given. Everyone needs to do that, but it is also about the kind of value that you bring to the table. And when we talk about uh, this comprehensive review and the overall success of the project will be considered a success not just if it's delivered on time and within budget and all that, but if it is providing the value that the customer was seeking, right? And one of the things that I talked about in the initial uh, phase that we were in, which was the initiation, where I mentioned that if the customer is looking for a certain number of sales because of this e-commerce website, now is the time to review whether the project was a success or not, whether the customer was able to meet those numbers or not. And that is why this post implementation review becomes so critical. You need to evaluate project performance against the original objectives and success criteria. This is something that I just mentioned. Identify and document successes, any challenges, and any areas for improvement. Use insights gained to refine project management processes. This is within your organizations and for your future projects, right? You, as a project manager, are going to work on another project now, right? Now, you need to document lessons learned. This is where you can create a formal document which outlines all the lessons that you have learned from the project, including what worked well, what could be improved. You can also include specific recommendations for enhancing project management processes, any communication, any team collaboration. This is something that you might want to do for future projects. You can share the lessons learned document with project team and relevant stakeholders to facilitate continuous improvement, because the website might not be a one and done sort of deal, right? It is possible that you now need to, in the phase 2 of this website project, you might have to deliver new functionalities, new features of the website. And this is where this kind of post implementation review, lessons learned, all of this is going to be super helpful. All right, provide recommendations for ongoing maintenance or enhancements. So I just mentioned that how this website might not be a one and done sort of deal. You might have to continuously support this customer. And this is where you, as a project manager, need to provide recommendations. It is possible that you will not be involved in this project from here on, because it could be the operations manager, it could be the operations team who is going to take over. So you are essentially doing a handoff from the project manager to the operations manager, right? So this is where you need to provide recommendations for ongoing maintenance or enhancements. If applicable, you can provide recommendations for ongoing maintenance of the website or suggest enhancement based on the user feedback, because you have done all these surveys, you have conducted all these interviews, right? Collaborate with relevant teams to implement any identified improvements or updates. This could be the operations team. Document recommendations for future projects, incorporating insights from post implementation review. So, these were the 6 steps. These were all the sub steps that we talked about that you as a project manager need to take. But here's something more important. Here's the critical aspect, right? What exactly is common in all these steps that we talked about? Effective communication. You as a project manager need to regularly update stakeholders on progress, right? So that is where effective communication comes into the picture. Collaboration. Are you addressing issues promptly? Are your team members being able to collaborate? Have you provided that kind of environment, right? And then adaptability. This is all about adjusting the plan as needed. As the requirements evolved, you were able to adjust the plans. Now, you need to keep in mind that project management is an iterative process, and that is why I kept that post implementation review totally separate, right? That sixth step totally separate from the other 5 steps, which are also the phases of the project. Someone who is a project manager or someone who is a PMP will know the first 5 that we talked about. But post implementation review, that is something which is important, because project management in itself is an iterative process. You as a project manager will now be working on another project, and what good this project did for you if you were not able to carry forward the improvements, your learnings from this project and apply it to the other project. Now, before I dive into what Lounge Access is, I hope you're finding some good nuggets in this live stream. And if you are, definitely go ahead, drop a like, and let me know. I'm curious, what are your thoughts about what all that we just discussed, what all that we just talked about? Anything, is there anything that you would like to add to this 6 steps that I mentioned, right? Is there anything that you want to discuss with me regarding this topic or project management career in general, right? And discussing with me is where this Lounge Access program comes into the picture. You can discuss your career goals and you can get your questions answered around the PMP certification or your project management career path. And you can jump, if you want to jump into project management domain, right? What you definitely need to do, or if there's anything else that you need to talk to me about, as long as we stick to project management, you can drop a note to admin@pmclounge.com, and our team is going to help you schedule this meeting with me. Actually, I've done several such Lounge Access Zoom meetings with several people from different domains, and videos of snippets of those videos are also available on our channel. So definitely check that out as well. And definitely take advantage of this Lounge Access opportunity. I hope you are able to connect why this is called Lounge Access, because remember, we are PMC Lounge. So a little bit of wordplay there, and we called this as Lounge Access. Here's a testimonial. Please definitely drop your feedback. It keeps us stay motivated. It keeps us going. You can head over to pmclounge.com/write and you can drop your feedback or your testimonial. Thank you very much. And with that, we have come to an end of this live stream. Definitely like, share, subscribe if you like our work. Consider contributing by using the thanks button or joining us. You can also head over to pmclounge.com/contribute if you want to make a contribution. Don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, the number one free PMP and project management resource. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.